How to write your own workout program. This is going to be a step-by-step guide. I'm going to give you a full example at the end of a sample workout program that you can follow. I'm going to show you exactly how I go about writing this. We're going to go over rep range. We're going to go over exercise selection, intensity, volume, fucking split, everything you could possibly need to know about writing your own program. I'm going to explain why for each thing and everything you need to know basically, plus an example at the end. So stay tuned for that. Don't just skip to that or I'm going to fucking get mad at you. And yeah, but get your fucking cocks out because it's gonna be a ton of value. What, bro? Okay, shut up, dude. Let's get right into it. If it'll let me switch slides. There we go. All right. So the split, everyone's favorite topic, the fucking split. If you watch my reels, you know that I think this is very much overstated and overcomplicated. I don't think your split matters a whole lot. It definitely matters, but not as much as people think. I think what truly matters is what I have listed here. I think hitting each muscle twice a week, which I'll explain in a second, and finding something that fits your schedule and that you enjoy because, as you can see here, adherence and consistency are the biggest, most important factor because nothing else matters if you're not consistent, if you don't stick to the plan, if you're constantly wanting to change things or skipping your workouts or not doing the things you're supposed to be doing, then you're not going to get results. It's as simple as that. Consistency is above all. Obviously, you can be consistently shit, but I'd argue that being consistently shit is better than being inconsistently good, but obviously it depends on the two extremes, but fuck you. Anyways, find one that fits your schedule and that you enjoy because that's going to allow you to actually stick to it and be motivated to train, which is another very important thing. And all of these things are going to produce better results, which is what we all want. And who doesn't want to have more fun in the process, you know? So we're going to do that. I'm going to go over some examples of this in a second on the next slide, I believe. Um, but let's talk about frequency. So I just made a reel. Probably by the time you're watching this, which I believe I'm gonna upload this tomorrow, Saturday. This is what I'm doing on a Friday night, by the way, at fucking college. I'm fucking recording this. Wouldn't want to be doing anything else. Anyways, I think I'm gonna post this tomorrow and the reel tomorrow about splits, muscle frequency, etc. So you'll see more about that, but I'm gonna try to explain this, and I'll make a full video about this topic and about like every topic in this video at certain points because I could literally talk about all this shit for hours on end, as you can tell already. But why do we want a two times muscle frequency? Why is that so important? So basically, the most up to date and best quality research we have on this topic suggests that hitting muscles 2 to 3 times a week. I should have wrote 2 to 3 times, honestly. Hitting muscles 2 to 3 times a week is better than 1 time a week, and is just the best approach overall. Now, um, some people will argue whether three is better than two, if that really matters. I don't think it does that much, but I can definitely see arguments on both sides. I don't think it matters that much. Let me just explain the mechanisms though, and you'll probably see why some people will argue that 3 times is better based on these mechanisms, but it doesn't really show it in the research, for one, and it's just something that you can try yourself if you want to see what works better for you because it's not going to be the same for everybody. There's too much that goes into it, but let's explain. So, the first reason is we have something called atrophy. Essentially, our muscle fibers, which make up a muscle, they're muscle cells, similar to how your skin isn't just your skin. It's a bunch of skin cells that make up the tissue. You could think of this like having a basketball team. Like you don't just have the team itself, you have a bunch of players that make up the team. You can think of those like the muscle fibers. Now, our muscle fibers are, they seem to be always either growing or shrinking, aka hypertrophying or atrophying. Now, how do we obviously don't want them to be shrinking, we want them to be growing, right? So, how do we make them grow? How do we make them shrink less? We train them, we stimulate them in the gym. That's what causes them to that's what causes an increase in muscle protein synthesis, an increase in the rate at which the proteins that make up the muscle fibers are created and built, basically. And the way we do that is by training, like I said, or also just walking, like mechanically loading is what we want because mechanical tension is what seems to stimulate hypertrophy. Now, you can get this mechanical tension from simply walking, from doing simple movements like even raising my arm up like this, There's going to be some muscle fibers in my shoulder that were just mechanically loaded, just experienced some tension with that. Now, there's not going to be much because my movement was pretty fast, for one. I'll make a full video about this, don't worry. But um, the main reason is because there's not a high degree of effort. So basically, not that many muscle fibers have to be active in order to help me do this movement. And that's why we want to resistance train. We want to actually work hard. We want to actually train close to failure, which I'll talk about in a second as well. And if you see me keep looking up here, it's because my webcam is in the corner here. So I'm looking at myself because I'm fucking sexy as shit in this lighting. Okay. Just wait till okay, shut up, dude. Anyways, I don't even know what I'm saying, dog. Anyways, so we need to, if we want our muscles to grow, if we want our muscle fibers to spend more time growing than shrinking, we want to load them in the gym. We want to train them more frequently. So people will argue that if volume is equated, this doesn't matter, but this is flawed for many reasons. Again, I don't know if I don't really want to cover all this right now because this will literally be like a 3 hour video. I'll make a full separate video about this, but essentially, your muscle fibers will spend less time shrinking when you train them more often. So let's say you train them on Monday. It seems like the growth period is anywhere between like 48 to 72 hours, where muscle protein synthesis will be elevated. Therefore, your muscles will be growing basically. And then the rest of that time, they're shrinking. Um, so if we waited a whole week, like if we're doing a bro split, we're only hitting muscles once a week. If we waited a whole week for that process, um, or yeah, if we waited a whole week to train them again, then we would be spending the majority of that week actually shrinking. We'd be spending more time shrinking than growing. And we would have to do a shit ton of volume in order to produce net growth. We have studies showing this. We have frequency data showing that if you train muscles once a week, we need, okay, only about 3 to 4 sets done once a week only maintains that muscle. In order to grow, you would have to do like 4 to 5 plus sets for that muscle if you're only doing once a week. Now, if you do 2 times a week, you only have to do one set. One set done twice a week produces growth. So that shows you the significance of frequency right there. If that isn't enough evidence, then I don't know what is. But that's one reason. Another reason why this frequency is important, what actually explains this outcome data that we have, um, is the fact that you're getting more effective sets, more first sets. Think about it. What set in your work or what set in your workout, yeah, is the most effective? Are you able to push the hardest, the closest to failure? Feel like you're the strongest? It's your first set, right? After you warmed up and everything. Obviously, that's assuming you warmed up properly. And if your first set isn't your strongest, then you're not warming up properly. It's a whole nother topic. But you're the freshest. You don't have fatigue. You didn't just hit a set prior. You're going to be the freshest. You're going to be the most motivated, the most energized, everything. So your first set's going to be the most effective, the most stimulating. We have a lot of research to support this. How much less stimulating the next sets are depends on a ton of different things, but it could be a significant amount less stimulating. Each set has diminishing returns essentially. So we want to maximize the amount of first sets that we have per week. And that's why instead of doing 5 sets for a muscle once a week, if we split that up into 2 sets done twice a week, even though it's not the same, let's say 4 sets. So if we did 4 sets once a week compared to 2 sets twice a week, we would have 2 chances for first sets and also 2 second sets, which would be better than just 1 first set, 1 second set, and then third and fourth sets, which are probably not going to give us a ton of growth. That's a whole, you could debate about that, but we have pretty good data to suggest this. So hopefully that makes sense for why muscle frequency is important. I should have just made that a whole fucking separate video, honestly, because that was a long fucking yap and we're like 9 minutes in. Holy shit. Get fucking pumping here, Nick. Okay. So why do we want rest days? Rest days are ideal because there's multiple kinds of fatigue. We have central nervous system fatigue, which is kind of like, you could think of it like whole body fatigue. Your central nervous system is your brain and your spinal cord. They essentially control everything. They control every single movement you do starts with the CNS. It starts with central motor commands being sent from the brain down the brainstem to the motor neurons that actually innervate, supply nerves to your muscles, and actually cause contraction, actually produce movement. Um, there's also muscular fatigue. There's a bunch of different things. Muscle damage can result in central nervous system fatigue if you have muscle damage present. This seems to be able. It seems like your brain is able to detect this when there's inflammatory markers in your bloodstream. It seems like your brain is able to detect this, and this will cause central nervous system fatigue. It will increase your perception of effort. It will reduce the amount of muscle fibers you can activate, how strong you are, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'll make a million videos about this, don't worry. But rest days allow us to alleviate some of that and prevent overtraining, make sure our muscles are recovering, make sure our central nervous system is recovering. They just allow us to have time off. And those of us who have fucking jobs, who run businesses, who are in school full time, who fucking have lives and aren't in fucking high school and just lift every day. If you are, all power to you. Enjoy that shit while it lasts. Because once you get employed, once you start college or anything like that, you're gonna realize the the beauty of rest days and how awesome they can be. I love to train, and having rest days makes me enjoy training more because I look forward to it more because I do it less often. And yeah, I could go on and on about that, but ideally, you want to take 2, 3 rest days. So this would look like you're training 4 to 5 days a week. Um, you could even do 3 days a week. You can do 2 days, but we'll go into that on the next slide. But you could definitely get away with one rest day. I would never go below one rest day. I think at least having one rest day, so training 6 days a week max. I don't have any of my clients doing that. The most I would do is five. A lot of people who love to train, I'll meet them in the middle. We'll do 5 days. I prefer 3 to 4, usually four. But um, again, this is something you can just test out. You can see, let me try 5 days a week. Let me see how 4 days compares. Am I progressing better? I'll get into this exact um, topic later on in the video, but that's just a simple run through of the split, how to approach this kind of thing. Um, I could talk about all these points more, but and I will, but these are just some sample ones. I'll get into these later on, so don't worry about that, or right now actually. So, okay, so we got that down. Now, how do we actually pick this split besides all the things I just said? So we want to start with how many days do you want to train? This goes in the idea of picking something that fits your schedule and that you enjoy. So how many days a week do you want to train? Be realistic with yourself here. How many days are you actually going to be able to stick to? Are you actually going to want to stick to? Don't try to go 6 days a week because you think, "Oh, I have to work out every day or I'm a fat ass or um, I suck." Like working harder doesn't necessarily um, isn't necessarily better, and it's also not going to be sustainable in a lot of cases. So be realistic with yourself. I think 4 days is the sweet spot for a lot of people. It's what I do right now. I've done 3 days in the past. I've done 2 days in the past. I've done five, six. I don't think I ever did seven, but six. Okay, sorry. Um, but yeah, so follow this template here. You can do full body twice a week. Like I said, you only need one set twice a week to produce growth. So you can do full body twice a week and grow muscle. I have multiple clients doing it. I've done it myself when I'm really busy, when I have these little periods of time, maybe a week here and there where I'm just super busy, or even a couple weeks. I remember in the summer when I was spending fucking 10 hours on a single Instagram reel every single day because I would research for hours and edit for hours and make a 3 minute video on 2 times speed of just fucking straight value like this, pretty much. Um, if you've been watching for that long, shout out to you. Anyways, I was insanely busy. I was also working and doing a bunch of other shit. So I was literally doing full body like every 72 hours, I think. And was it the best progress I've ever made? No, but the point is it can work. I would say I would obviously recommend doing full body 3 times a week instead, but you also don't have to follow these exact things. You can get creative. You can combine upper lower full body. You can combine push pull legs upper lower like I showed here. It gets more complex because of a lot of different things, repeating exercises, etc., which I just realized that I didn't include in this presentation, which I probably should. Maybe I'll touch on it if I have the time, or I'll make a separate video about it. But anyways, follow this template, refer back to it, take a screenshot, whatever you want. You don't have to follow these exact ones. There's a million different variations. You could do an Arnold split, whatever the fuck you want, man. Just pick one that you enjoy that works for you and run with it. And it's not set in stone. You can change it up, but you don't want to change things up too often. And I'll talk about that later. Now, exercise selection. I'm going to make a full video about this topic. It might be the next video I make, depending on, I'll probably put up a poll on Instagram, see what you guys want to see next. Um, but I'll try to touch on some of these things here. I'm already getting a little bit tired. It's fucking 15 minutes in. It's been a long day. It's been a long day, but we're fucking going. We're running. Um, anyways, so exercise selection. Again, this is pretty overcomplicated, overemphasized. I think how you do things is more important than what you do. I'll talk about that later. I think I've said that 80 fucking times right now, but so we'll start with enjoyment, similar to the split idea. You want to enjoy the exercise you're doing. You're going to be more motivated to do them, which has been shown to increase muscle fiber activation, increase motor unit recruitment, which basically leads to more muscle growth, more strength. It's also going to be more sustainable. You're going to be more consistent with it. Um, and who wants to do shit that they don't enjoy? You know what I mean? So pick an exercise that you enjoy. Don't force yourself to do some shit that you hate just because like, oh, it's the most optimal when in most cases it's not. And the fact that you don't enjoy it already makes it not optimal. Optimal. I hate that fucking word. Anyways, um, so pick one that you enjoy. Then we got stability and coordination demand. So this this exists on a spectrum. So certain exercises are going to be more stable than other exercises. So let's say we have least stable exercises here. This is going to be free weight exercises. Um, Maybe one where you're standing up. Let's say like a standing dumbbell shoulder press, for example. There's no back support. You're not sitting down, so you have to balance like your center of mass. You have to focus on that, and you have to focus on coordinating the dumbbells. A bunch of other shit. So there's that. And then you have, let's say, the opposite of that is a seated shoulder press machine where everything is kind of just set and like you don't really have to think. You basically just push, you train hard, and it's great. There's no cognitive demand, there's no physical demand for the stability slash coordination aspect. Now, this doesn't mean that you want to only do machines because there's pros and cons to these different things. And like I said, it exists on a spectrum. Now, like I said, trying to be too stable can have negative effects, negative consequences. I don't even know what I'm saying anymore, but I didn't script this at all, by the way. I'm just fucking going off the dome here if you couldn't tell. But so the stability of your movement, how hard it is to perform, these are all things that matter. The more stable the movement, the more muscle fiber activation in the target muscle you want to train because you have to allocate less motor central motor command. I'm trying to keep this really simple for you guys because I could really nerd out on you, but I don't want to because I want you guys to really understand this and be able to use it. And I don't want to just flex my knowledge, even though it's fun. But anyways, so if I have to think about like bracing my core, balancing, all this different shit, making sure the dumbbells are lined up well, like all this different stuff, like that just takes away from the stimulus you're actually going to get in the muscles you're trying to train. Like let's say the shoulders for this in this case. That should make sense. That should be a pretty simple concept, I hope. If it's not, like feel free to comment any questions you have, by the way. Um, I'm happy to answer them. I love talking about this shit clearly. Anyways, the coordination demand is slightly, it's kind of the same idea, but another way to explain this is coordination is like the skill part of performing a movement. So this is mainly seen with like free weight movements, like something like a squat. This requires a lot of coordination, a lot of skill. Um, you have to have a certain center of mass. You have to have certain foot pressure, um, a certain amount of hinge and torso lean, and a bunch of other shit. Um, Basically, the more you have to think about all that stuff, and the more coordination demand there is, basically the harder the movement is to learn. The the harder it's going to be to perform, obviously, and therefore the less muscle fiber activation, motor unit recruitment, muscle growth you're probably going to get from it, theoretically speaking. Depends on the situation, obviously, but um, this is why when you're starting a new exercise, you'll find that the first few weeks of doing the new movement, you're able to progress quick as shit. Let's say you started with 30 pounds on a shoulder press. This is your first time doing it. You're able to jump to 40 pounds in like a month. And then from there, all of a sudden it slows down. You're like, you're stuck on the 40s for fucking weeks after that. You're like, what the fuck happened? It's because those first few weeks of performing a movement, of starting a program in general, are primarily neural adaptations, adaptations happening in the brain, basically just your brain getting better at performing the movement. There's also other things like rate coding, basically the rate at which your brain sends signals to your muscles to contract and synchronization of those of that contraction. It's called motor unit synchronization. There's fucking so many different things to it. Um, It's pretty cool stuff. But anyways, the first few weeks of doing new movement are primarily that, just getting better at that, and then you start to really be able to produce growth, which is why you don't want to change movements up too often. And again, I'm going to make a video about this, a short form video. I've talked about this a million times as well, but hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't, comment any questions, happy to answer. So then we have loadability. If it's, let's say it's a body weight pull up and you can do 30 reps easily, which I'll talk about rep range later. Um, Obviously you can add weight. You can put a dumbbell on your feet or put a backpack on, whatever. But let's say you couldn't do that theoretically. That would not be a good exercise to choose because we know that you need, as you get stronger, as you actually increase the capability of your muscles to produce force, aka you get bigger muscles and these neural adaptations, etc. We need to continue to progress the resistance and meet the demand for that resistance because now let's say a pull up for you is easy. It used to be hard, now it's easy. You can do fucking 30 like I just said. Now we want to increase the resistance, increase the challenge in order to basically keep making progress basically. I don't want to get too far into that. That should make sense hopefully. Pretty simple concept. And then ease of use slash setup. You don't want to set up a fucking, if you see some of the bullshit that people be doing on TikTok, like fucking setting up a cable where you're like tied to it and then you're doing unilateral, you have like a foam roller on your fucking arm, like all this crazy shit that people be doing. Like nobody wants to set that up. I mean, if you do, then all power to you. I'm gonna make fun of you because you look like a fucking idiot. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm not. Yeah, I am. Anyways, um, most people don't want to do that. Like if you can do all of your shit on the same machine or like the same cable stack or the same bench or the same dumbbells, like the easier it is for you to do, the less time it takes between exercises, between sets, everything like that, the more likely you're going to stick to it, like the less time you're going to waste, et cetera, et cetera. So it's something to consider. It's practicality. Like there's all this stuff is like a lot of it is ideal scenario stuff, but then you have the actual practicality stuff, which is like these two things especially. Um, and that's where you have to make adjustments. But yeah, hopefully that all makes sense. Now, the main idea with exercise selection is we want to do about one exercise for each main muscle action. Now, you could argue about, there's actually an argument going on like right now today about this exact topic. I don't really care about any of this shit, to be honest. Like, if you can't tell, I try to be pretty simple with my, I'm not gonna get to that. There's no time for that. You guys don't give a fuck. Anyways, so let's say we want to do one exercise for each main muscle action. So let's say we want to train the chest. I'm gonna go through a full example of this. Fuck later, outlining how to do this with an upper lower split. But let's say we want to train the chest. Now, what's the chest's main function? It's to bring the arm across the body. This is called horizontal abduction. Sorry, adduction. ADD. Horizontal adduction, bringing the arm across the body. Like think of a pec deck fly or a flat press. Look at the upper part of my arm. It's bringing it across the body. Um, so we want to do a flat press or a fly where we're training that motion. That's how you want to think about these things. You want to think about what muscle am I trying to train? What muscle action does that muscle perform? What joint action? And what movement, what exercise can I do to load that joint action and get stronger at it in order to produce growth in that muscle that I want to train? Now, the chest also does shoulder flexion. It does frontal plane adduction. It does shoulder extension. Um, it does rotation of the shoulder, etc. But the main muscle action, the main thing you want to do is horizontal adduction. It's going to train the entire chest. So doing a flat press for that is what I would recommend. We'll talk about that later, but hopefully that thought process makes sense to you. Again, what muscle do I want to train? What joint action does this muscle produce? And how can I load this joint action and get stronger at it in order to grow this muscle that I want to train? That's the thought process for exercise selection. Now, the biceps is a really simple example. The biceps, they flex the elbow. I don't know if you can see the fucking size of my biceps in this lighting, but okay. Anyways, shut up, dude. The biceps, they do curls basically. They also supinate the wrist, but that's nobody needs to train that. But so how do you train that action? You do curls, like I just said. And we'll get into more of that later. So the sauce for this, what I recommend for everybody, just pick your favorite variation of these and just get super strong at them. I think especially like arm training, people complicate that way too much. Literally just pick your favorite curl variation, pick your favorite extension variation. You've probably heard me say this a million times and I will die on this hill. Do that. Pick your favorite flat press variation or pec deck fly or fly variation, I should say. Just get super strong at it, and you could obviously change them up occasionally. You could argue about how often you should do that, which maybe I'll talk about in this video. I don't remember, but yeah. So then how you do things is more important than what you do. You've probably seen, or I don't know what, like, I assume if you guys follow me, you're into the science a little bit, so you're probably into this niche. I don't really associate with this niche anymore, but I am in it. Obviously, like, this is literally what I'm studying in school. It's what I'm most passionate about. I love this shit. I'm a fucking nerd, but anyways, there's a big trend to focus on form, which is great because a lot of people, including myself, were not doing this. And I didn't even realize how bad my form was until I got a coach. Shout out Declan, you're the fucking man. You're not watching this shit. You got way better things to do, but I fucking love that guy. Anyways, um, he's helped me a ton with my form, which is a very beneficial thing of having a coach. You can't have an objective. I mean, you can, but it's very hard to be objective about your own training. And having somebody who's knowledgeable, who knows how to perform movements properly, can give you an outside perspective, feedback on how to improve your technique is extremely beneficial. So I can't recommend it enough. DM me if you want help with that. Anyways, how you do things is more important than what you do. You could argue this, but what actually dictates, what actually causes muscle growth? It's the tension you put on your muscle fibers, the mechanical tension. What actually dictates this tension? It's the way we perform movements. Are we bringing other muscles into the equation in order to move the weight because we're ego lifting or because it gets really hard at the end of a set and our brain wants to incorporate other muscles because it's going to help move that weight. It's going to be easier for it. We want to try to avoid these things, and I'll make a full video about how to critique your own exercise selection and that sort of thing. I mean, exercise execution, but basically, don't focus too much on the exercise variation you're doing. Just pick one and get really good at performing it, get really strong at it, and that's going to be more important than worrying about, oh, what's the best exercise. I don't think it's that deep. I think how you perform it is very important. So focus on that and get help if you need it. Now, volume. This is everyone loves talking about this. And if you know me, then you know my take on this is there's no magical number. And if you think there is, then you're a fucking idiot. And you should go fucking touch some grass. I don't know. People love to argue about this, and there is some research on this, and there's a very wide range, and there's a lot of, there's very big reason for that. One, okay, shut the fuck up, Nick. So, volume, the amount of volume you should do depends on the frequency you're training, like we talked about before, the muscle we're training, what what is the proportion of the fiber types of that muscle, what is the recoverability of that muscle, what is the voluntary activation of that muscle, how many muscle fibers can you actually recruit in that muscle because it's different across muscles, across people, etc. These things will all affect the recovery, the recoverability of these muscles, and a bunch of other shit. What exercise are we doing? What rep range are we training in? Higher rep ranges can probably take longer to recover from. They definitely do. This has been shown. Obviously, it depends on the context, but depends on you. Like I said, your specific, a million different things, your limb lengths, everything. And fuck you. Depends on everything. So there's no magical number. Anyone who tells you there is an idiot. Stop listening to them. Listen to me instead because I'm the fucking goat. Psych. Okay. Um, Geez, I'm retarded. Anyways, I would say, just as a general recommendation, 1 to 3 sets per exercise is a good start. Um, Again, it depends on the frequency, but this applies to if you're doing full body, if you're doing upper lower, if you're doing push pull legs. 1 to 3 is a good general recommendation, I think. The majority, or literally every single exercise that I do, is in this range in some fashion right now. Not to say that you can't do 4 sets, or I wouldn't really recommend that. I would probably do more variation, like 2 different exercises for 2 sets rather than 4 sets for the same exercise. It's a whole nother topic. Anyways, two sets seems to be the sweet spot in a lot of cases. The majority of the exercise that I do are two sets right now. This isn't a magical number. A lot of people will talk about like two sets to failure. Now, again, this isn't a magical number, but it does seem to be the sweet spot and work very well for a lot of people in a lot of cases. So that's generally where I would recommend starting for most exercises. And I'll show you this later when I walk through the program example. But the main idea here is that you just have to experiment. I recommend generally starting out with the lowest amount because I'd rather you undertrain and not be doing enough volume or having more capacity to do more volume rather than the opposite, rather than starting out at the highest amount and having to taper down, having to take days off, having to deload unnecessarily. These things aren't good. We don't want to do these things if we don't have to. So my general approach is to start lower. Um, Depends on the exercise, etc. Obviously. So, but usually I'll start with two sets, maybe one set, and then from there we'll see. We'll experiment. We'll see how is progression. Are we progressing at a rate that we're happy with? Do we do we think we can recover from more? Then we'll add a set and we'll see. We'll monitor our progression accordingly. And I'll talk more about this in a minute. Maybe the next slide, or I think rep range is next, but after that, probably maybe I don't know. And fuck you. But the name of the game with volume and with all of this shit is just you have to experiment. I know you guys want things handed to you. You want a fucking you want a you want everything to be black and white to be what's the fucking why can't I think of this? What's the saying? Um Fuck, I don't know. I guess black and white. I know that's one of them, but you want everything handed to you on a platter. You want everything like this is exactly what you should do. It just doesn't work like that. And yeah, fucking deal with it. You got to experiment. I'll talk more about this in a second. That's volume done. Fuck you. Now, intensity. Like I said before, I think I said this, we need to train close to failure in order to stimulate muscle growth. This is what actually causes muscle growth because there is one, a high degree of mechanical tension, and there is two, a high degree of muscle fiber activation, motor unit recruitment, aka a lot of muscle fibers that are actually experiencing this tension and therefore are able to grow. Now, the amount of muscle fiber activation is heavily correlated to the amount of effort you are putting in. So if you are exerting a maximum effort, which is what happens when you train close to failure, right? You are recruiting the not necessarily the max amount of motor units or muscle fibers, same thing, but close to it, depending on the context. So, and what else happens when we train close to failure? Your reps start to slow down, right? That means more mechanical tension because mechanical tension exists on the force velocity curve. Force and velocity are inversely related. The faster you contract a muscle, the less force you are able to produce, the less mechanical tension you are able to produce, because basically there's less time for cross bridges, simultaneous cross bridges to occur if you're moving too quickly versus if you're moving slow. That's the main reason. I don't expect you to understand that, and I'm not going to explain that here. I'll make a separate video explaining how this all works, but yeah, that's how that works basically. So we want to train close to failure because we have an involuntary slowing of our contraction speed. You've probably heard this when talking about mechanical tension, when talking about training close to failure. This is what actually stimulates growth. So those reps at the end of a set, when you're really grinding, it takes multiple seconds fucking to grind it out. Those are the reps that you grow. So what I recommend generally is if you're a beginner, if you're in like your first year of training, whatever, this is all arbitrary. I recommend taking the vast majority of your sets all the way to failure because how are you going to know what failure is if you don't train to failure, you know? And you're not going to be skilled enough to judge this and to be able to tell when you should cut the set versus when you should push hard. And I think you need to build the skill of doing that and of keeping good technique when training close to failure because like I said before, you're going to want to fucking what's the word? Do different orientation, like change your position, incorporate other muscles into the movement in order to push that weight because it's super hard, right? So we need to practice this skill. This is a skill that you need to learn, and it takes time. But you could argue that leaving a rep or two in reserve as opposed to going all the way to failure will be more beneficial. We have research suggesting that The amount of growth is very similar between failure versus one rep in reserve, or maybe even two reps in reserve. I think there's pretty good data to support that as well. Um, this can be explained by the fact that that last rep, when you're moving really slow, yes, it will be the most stimulating because there's the most amount of tension, because it's the slowest speed and probably the most amount of recruitment because the most effort. But there's also the most amount of fatigue because of that slow speed. We have calcium ion related fatigue. I don't expect you to understand this at all, but basically it's the most tiring, it's the most fatiguing. That should make sense, right? So there's a trade-off here. Now, you could argue about whether this trade-off is worth it or not, which side prevails, etc. But anecdotally speaking, basically, if you don't know what that word means, that means like in my experience and everyone's experience and people's experience that are way smarter than me, way more experienced in coaching and training than me, my coach, etc. Like most people think that one rep in reserve is superior. They see better results, more consistent progression with this approach because there's less fatigue, there's less trade-off there, like I said. So I recommend if you're more intermediate to advanced, you've been training for a while, you've trained to failure, you actually know what training to failure is. You can keep good technique when training to failure. You know how to judge this, so you therefore know how to judge when you have one rep in reserve. That's when I would recommend training to one rep in reserve for most of your sets. Now, I'm supposed to do this for my sets. I find myself still taking a lot of them to zero reps in reserve to failure. You can argue if that's a different thing, it's the same shit. Um, I still find myself not leaving a rep reserve in a lot of cases, and it's just because it's fun. It's fun to train it to failure. But you'll most likely see better results if you leave a rep reserve because it's also very hard to keep good technique on that last rep, like I said, which can also cause problems. So, yeah, I could talk about this forever. I'll make a separate video about this, like always, but hopefully that idea makes sense. Again, if you have questions, comment them below, please. Um, Now, rep range. This one, I just made a video about this. Go watch it. It's a pretty simple concept. Basically, we have research suggesting that any rep range between about 5 and 30 produces pretty similar growth. Um, Now, there is a trend for the lower rep ranges being better, and that can be explained by the fact that there's less fatigue for one. There's probably more recruitment because as you get to these higher rep ranges, you have more afferent feedback, more negative sensations that basically cause you to reach failure sooner and therefore reach a lower level of muscle fiber activation. Um, I don't want to confuse you, but there's that, and they also cause more fatigue, like I said, so they can take longer to recover from, which is why I generally don't recommend going above like 12 reps. At the very most, 15. I don't go above 10 reps in most cases. I don't even really go above like 8 in most cases, but I think 5 to 12 is a great place to start. Um, Now, one of the benefits of slightly higher rep ranges, like 8 to 12, whatever, 12 to 15, whatever, as opposed to like 5 reps is, like I said before, it takes skill to be able to lift heavy weight with good form. And most people will end up ego lifting and changing their technique just to try to progress, just to try to lift heavy. We're all guilty of it. It's called ego lifting. We all do it. So lifting in a high rep range helps us prevent that to an extent, especially for beginners or when you're starting a new exercise. This can be beneficial to just train in a slightly higher rep range. Get good, earn the right to train heavier. Then you can start to train a little bit heavier, a little bit lower rep ranges, because they will theoretically be a little bit better based on the fact that there's less fatigue and there's potentially better recruitment. But you could argue that. I'm not here to argue that. Just pick a rep range between 5 to 12, whatever you want, whatever you prefer, whatever you like the most. Doesn't matter that much. Um, like I said, lower reps, better, less fatigue, but hard to execute. So there's a trade-off there again. But hopefully that makes sense. I just made a video about this. Pretty simple concept, very overstated. I could talk about why I wouldn't go above 12 to 15 reps and how there's all this other shit going on. I'll make more videos about that, don't worry. But for now, that's all you need to know. Now, the most important thing that I touched on multiple times here, you just have to experiment, man. There's You can write a program that's like perfect on paper and then you try it out, or it's perfect for one person and it works insanely well for them. They get insanely good results, and then you try it and it doesn't work for you. Now, why is that? I don't know. It could be a million fucking things, but that's why you have to experiment. Maybe it's the volume. Maybe you have to change the volume up. Maybe you're doing too much. You can't recover from it. Maybe you're not doing enough. Maybe you need to change the frequency. Maybe you need to change the exercise. Maybe you need to try different rep ranges. There's so many different variables you can change, like all the things I talked about here, plus a million other things. So this is the what's the word? I don't know. This is the reason why you want to logbook, why you want to track your workouts, because if you're not tracking your workouts, then you don't know if they're actually working. This is what progressive overload allows us to do. You could argue if progressive overload is what causes growth, it's not really. Um, People will tell you that you have to give your body more stress, you have to add more load to give it more stress, give it a reason to grow. I don't really buy into that. It's just not inherently true. It doesn't seem to be. It is true, but I don't know how to explain that, but hopefully you get what I mean. Anyways, progressive overload is the feedback that tells us if we are growing or not, if we are getting stronger or not. Now, like I said before, strength is not just muscle growth. That's not the only thing that contributes to strength expression. There's also the neural adaptations, etc. But if we've been doing exercises for multiple weeks on end, multiple months on end, then the vast majority of those strength gains will come from muscle growth, if not all of them. So then we can use progressive overload, our training feedback, as great feedback to whether or not we are growing. If we're getting stronger over time, we're likely growing. If we're not getting stronger over time, we're likely not growing. A bigger muscle is a more capable muscle. It has more proteins that actually produce force. Therefore, you are stronger. That should make sense, hopefully. Um, so that's the beauty of logbooking. You need to be tracking your workouts if you're serious about it, or at the very least have like if you're somehow able to remember everything, then have a mental note of it. Know what weight you did, know how many reps you did, and try to beat that each week. Now, you don't necessarily want to do that every week. Depends on your training age, how experienced you are, etc. But that's the general idea there. Now we want to adjust accordingly. Like I said before, if you're not progressing, then adjust one single variable. Don't change multiple variables at a time, because how the fuck are you going to know what's actually working? What variable was it that actually made the difference there? If you change your split and the amount of frequency you're doing and the exercise and the rep range, then how do you know that it was the frequency and not the split? Or how do you know what was what? You don't. So don't be a fucking idiot. Don't change a million things at once. And also don't change things too often, because one, you don't want to change exercises too often because of that reason that I said before with the neural adaptations and all that stuff. And just because it's a pain in the ass and kind of impossible to actually track if you're not giving yourself enough time to actually get data to see if it's actually working or not. Plus a million other reasons. So just stop changing things so often. Stop changing multiple variables at once. Change one variable at once, ideally, and do it for multiple weeks on end. Be as consistent, as standardized as possible, and then make inferences from there based on the data that you get. That's the game. This is the game right here. This is the sauce. This is the game of training right here. Experiment, use your logbook, your progression as feedback, adjust accordingly, and run that cycle over and over again until the end of time, pretty much, because you're not just going to be able to do the same program forever. You're going to have to change things eventually. Um, so you have to kind of constantly be you have to constantly be looking at your logbook, seeing if things are working or not, and adjusting accordingly and experimenting and doing all this stuff. I didn't even get into like nutrition and other things that you can experiment with. It's very complex. Get a coach if you need help with this. Anyways, so let's walk through a program for you guys, because it's not like I haven't given you guys enough value yet, right? Psych. Okay. I don't know what I was gonna add here. Fuck, I fucked up. Um, but I'm just trying to give you guys as much value as possible. I want you guys to really, uh, I don't know. Fuck you. Anyways, so let's say we want to train 4 days a week. We determined that this is going to be the most sustainable, the most enjoyable. We like the idea of an upper lower split. We want to try it out. So we're going to do 4 days a week. So we're doing upper lower because that's the easiest one to do 4 days a week. You could do other variations probably, but there's not many that you could do that hit each muscle twice a week and train 4 days a week. So upper lower is the main option there. But if you want to do something else, then figure it out. Um, So what muscles do we want to train? So for the upper body, we have the chest, we have the lats, we have the traps, we have the shoulders, we have the biceps, we have the triceps. Those are the main six muscle groups. You could split some of them into like you could split the shoulders into like the front delt, the side delt, the rear delt, um, etc. You could split the chest into its different divisions. Same thing with the lats. Same thing with the triceps and the different heads, all this stuff. Well, I'll talk more about that in a second here. But this is the general these are the general main muscle groups you want to train. And you could obviously throw like the traps and rhomboids go together, they do the same thing. You could throw like if you're a fucking nerd and you want to include like the fucking teres major, the teres minor, the fucking rotator cuff muscles, like go a fucking head, you fucking nerd loser. Okay. But this is the main outline. Then for the lower body, we have the quads, we have the hamstrings, we have the adductors, we have the calves, and we have the glutes. If you want to be a fucking weirdo, no, I'm just kidding. But if you want to train glutes, then obviously we can include those too. Um, and again, you could include like the tibialis anterior or some fucking bullshit or the fucking the extensor hallucis longus. I know you don't know what that is. Anyways, these are the main muscles we want to train in the upper and the lower body. So this will guide what exercises we're going to do, right? Based on that principle that I explained before, right? So let's see this in action. You can screenshot this. You can use this. Um, Let me explain this to you though, because I want you to actually understand what's going on here. It's pretty simple, but so we said we wanted to train the chest, the lats, the upper back, the shoulders, the biceps, and the triceps, and that's exactly what we're doing here. We picked one main exercise for each of these muscles by taking one of their main joint action, and now we're loading it and we're training it. So for the flat press, we're doing horizontal adduction. Like I said, a little bit of shoulder flexion. The more you tuck your elbows in, the more upper chest you'll get likely because more shoulder flexion. The upper chest flexes the shoulder. Whole separate topic. But we'll do a flat press. We'll do a lat pull down. This will train. If this is a wide grip lat pull down in the frontal plane, this will train shoulder adduction. You can look that up because I can't really show you that well, but it's basically this motion, which it's like that. Look at the upper part of my arm. You could also do a more neutral grip pull down or row to train the shoulder extension function of the lats. You could argue about which one you should do, but then we have the upper back, and you could also split that in. You could do both, and I would generally recommend if you are more advanced, I would do both, adduction and extension, but whole other topic. Then we have an upper back row. This will be a more arms flared out row where you're getting less lat involvement, less shoulder extension, more scapular retraction. This will also train the rear delts super well because they do this motion. They bring the arm back. Um, you get a little bit of lats, obviously, the more you bring your arms in. So if you wanted more lats with that, you could just tuck your arms in more. You could only do that. You could just do a row with your arms more tucked in to hit the lats, the traps, um, the rear delts all in one. If you were short on time, you could make this like a 5 exercise thing. And then for the side delts, you could also do a frontal plane shoulder press, but I think here you should do a lateral raise in most cases if you were just limited to like 6 exercises. You want to keep things simple. That's the idea with this program, obviously, is to keep things as simple as possible, beginner friendly, etc. But it also works extremely well for more advanced people. We'll do a lateral raise. This will train primarily the side delts as well as the front delt a good amount, obviously, also depending on how you do it. The side delts bring your arm out to the side, the opposite of that adduction motion. They do abduction. They abduct the arm away. Think about like a UFO abducting your arm away. That's how I like to think about it. Shout out to my professor who told us that. And then we have a bicep curl. Just pick your favorite curl variation. We have a tricep push down. Pick your favorite tricep push down variation. Um, Pretty simple stuff, right? Now, for the legs, this is also pretty simple. So for the quads extend the knee. They straighten the knee. So leg extension, bang. And then the hamstrings, they do the opposite. They bend the knee. They bring the what do- they bring your leg closer to, yeah, you know what I mean. They bend your leg. They flex the knee flexion. Pretty simple. Um, Now we're also training these two actions with these two movements, or that's not necessarily true. With squat pattern, we're training knee extension again in a different way. Um, we're also going to be training hip extension. Um, so we're going to be incorporating, it depends on your execution, but we'll be incorporating some of the hip extensor muscles, the glutes, the adductor magnus, maybe the hamstrings, likely not a lot. Depends on how you do it. Whole nother topic, which I'm sure I'll make videos about. But so we have that, and then we have um, a hinge pattern. This is like an RDL, stiff leg deadlift, a 45-degree extension. This trains the other function of the hamstrings, which is hip extension. The hamstrings also extend the hip because they attach three of the four heads attached to the pelvis. They attach the hip and the knee, so they do both knee flexion and hip extension. Um, so we want to train both functions ideally. That's why we're doing a squat and a hinge. And you can see I put one set here as compared to two sets for everything else. That's just because these two are um, more demanding on the central nervous system, more tiring, take more time to recover from. Um, you could definitely get away with doing two sets though. I would generally recommend starting with one. But anyways, I'm not here to prescribe volume for you. But then we have adductors. Adductors is like bringing your legs closer together. So the sus machine, that's the inner part of your legs. Don't neglect those. They're very important. And then we have the calves, everyone's favorite. Pretty simple stuff, right? Obviously, take the volume and everything with a grain of salt, but this is the general framework of an upper lower program. And like I said, you could split these things up into different variations and you can do a bunch of different shit with it, but this is the basis of a good upper lower program. And I would just repeat this twice a week, ideally. You could do, like, if you wanted to do one curl variation on your first upper day of the week and then a different one on the second day, we could talk about how there's pros and cons to that and why I would probably recommend to repeat exercises, but it's not that deep, especially if you're a beginner. Just do whatever you want. Try to keep them as similar as possible is all I'll say. But like if you wanted to do a hack squat on one day and a pendulum squat on the other day, it's the same movement pretty much. So you could definitely do that. But yeah, hopefully that makes sense. Um, there's a bunch of other things I could touch on here, but that's the general idea of how to write a program. Um, I probably forgot like a couple different variables and stuff, but hopefully I covered everything. Leave any questions in the comments, please. If you need help with any of this stuff, if you're tired of fucking spinning your wheels and feeling like everything I just explained is like what the fuck, or you want to learn more about this shit because like you can clearly see here, education is a huge part of what I do, what I like to help people with. I like to explain why we do things based on exercise science, based on actual principles, not just like, oh, this works, like fucking what you see online. There's method to my madness. So, and I like to really educate all my clients. They get to ask me any questions they want, and I answer them in depth, explaining these different things, trying to educate, trying to help you guys understand why we do things, etc. Um, and if you just don't want to think about any of this shit, you want somebody to just help you do it, and or you feel like you're not capable, or you don't know which variables to adjust, or should I do this amount of volume, or should I do these exercises? If you want to take all the guesswork out of your training and you want somebody to help you out with it, let me help you. Just DM me. I'll see if I can help you out. I have a bunch of different options in terms of pricing, in terms of the actual service based on what you can afford. I'm sympathetic towards what you might be able to afford, what would work best for you. So just DM me. I really want to take on some more guys right now. I have some more room just opened up, so I'd love to help some of you guys out, man. So just shoot me a DM if you're interested. If you've ever thought about it, there's no harm in DMing me. I'm not scary. I'm just a guy. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. It's not a big deal. But yeah, just throwing it out there. Again, leave any questions in the comments. Share this with a friend. Like it, subscribe. I'm gonna try to keep banging these out. Sorry I missed last week, but um, I'm gonna try to do these weekly as much as I can. School was busy as fuck this week, but I'm still banging these out, still posting my reels, still hitting my shit because I'm the fucking goat. Anyways, thanks for watching. I really appreciate the support. You guys are the fucking best. If you somehow made it all the way through, I know you didn't. I know I'm talking to myself right now, especially when I started fucking promoting my coaching. But help a brother out, man. Help a brother out. Help a brother grow his business. Help a brother help you out because I fucking love this shit. And I'm gonna be one of the best coaches ever one day. And yeah, anyways, love you guys. Happy fucking Valentine's Day if you're watching this on Valentine's Day. I'll be fucking sitting in my room replying to clients and working on videos and studying and recording videos and killing myself. Okay, I'm just kidding. Peace out though.